Hi everyone, in this video I'm going to show you how I came up with my Hattie Stewart inspired artwork. Okay, so the first thing I did was I copied my image from Google onto my onto SketchBook. I chose a French Bulldog because I'm really crazy about French Bulldogs. Okay, so over here on my right hand side you can see that I've got all of my layers and I've named my layers so I can easily find them. So I'm just going to go through how I basically came about this artwork. Whenever you're being inspired by someone else's art style, it's really good to have their artwork ready to go and have a look at. So we're going to pop in Hattie Stewart's name on Google and we're going to have a look at a few of her artworks. Okay, so here you can see that she uses a lot of flat colors, a lot of bold, bright colors, dark colors. She does really intense highlights. She's kind of wacky and quirky, and she uses motifs and, you know, really tongue-in-cheek kind of thing. So I've downloaded a few of the images that have inspired me the most about her style, and I've already got them in a document ready to go, so I don't have to keep going back to the internet. But it's always important to have those images there ready to go. So the first thing I did when I was looking at some inspiration was I really loved this idea of the big eyes, and so I've done that to my drawing here. So I'll just bring it up forward so you can see it a little bit better. Basically they're just big juju eyes, big white spots. I did that just using the paintbrush tool over here, and I just changed the size and the colors as I went. And of course I'm advocate for LGBT rights, so I've got these big beautiful rainbow eyes, which is kind of also inspired by some of these things that she does around eyes, like zigzags and melty things and so on. Okay, from there I then had a look at some of the text that she does. So over here you can see that she's got text that kind of looks like it's melting, and so I did that with my document as well. So I used the black paintbrush and I just drew in some melting parts to make it look like it's melting. From there, I then I keep going back to my reference images. I'm like, what else does she do? So down here you can see that she does like this big, like sloppy red tongue. That's quite popular in a lot of her images, and they always have these quite bright reflections on them as well. So again, I did that with my artwork here. I gave it a big red tongue and I gave it a white reflection mark. Again, I did all of that just using my normal paintbrush, and I just changed the size and the colors as I went. Okay, so the tongue obviously stands out a lot, so I had to go in and I had to do some sort of like cartooning of the face. And something I really liked about what she does with her characters, again, in this artwork here, you can see there's kind of like these textured marks through the hair. And she kind of highlights and draws a few of the features. So here you can see like the eyebrows are drawn on, and she's got a little bit around the ear. So I went ahead and did some of that to my artwork. So here you can see that I've done some line details and I've added some kind of textured fur parts. So over here on the side, I'm just going to show you how I did that because it's a little bit hard to sort of explain. So I'm just going to add a new layer to do this on. So basically I created my brush. I grabbed my brush, and for my color choices, I've tried to pick up on the same colors that are already in the image. If you're not sure how to do that, I use the color picker, and when you click over the image with your color picker, you can sort of pick up on any color that's in the image. So I just chose a really nice brown color from there, and you can see now it's that color option in here. So what I did is I basically just created some stripes in that kind of tone in light and dark. And then to sort of break it down, I've used my hard erase tool, and I've basically just erased with a very small eraser, smaller than that. I've just basically gone through and I've just erased parts of that to kind of soften down and give it sort of that texture. So I am going in the same direction of the fur to try and get that detail. And then you can see that's kind of like really sharp around the edges. So I grabbed my soft erase tool and I've just sort of gone around the edges to lighten that off a little bit. And that's how I've created that really nice sort of soft fur texture that she's kind of created in a lot of her hair. Okay, I'm just going to delete that layer. Okay, and you can see now that around my tongue area it's kind of been marked in with some black lines. Okay, which brings me to the next kind of thing that I wanted to do. So I thought the tongue's kind of cool, like he's kind of got these droplets around his eyes. Maybe I can do like a slobbery tongue because it is a dog. So again, I added in some slobber marks. Again, just using my paintbrush, and I've put in those really obvious white highlights for the reflection. Again, just over here on my layers, you can see that I have to be really careful with where my layers are. So my tongue has to be below, you know, those lip lines, and my drool has to be behind the tongue, just so I don't have to be, you know, really neat around my edges. So just keep that in mind as you're going. So I'm kind of there with my bully, and I'm kind of thinking, well, I need a little something extra. So again, when I went back and I had a look at my my example pieces of her work, she has a lot of these kind of details in the background that I thought were really quite interesting. So I decided, I had a look at my image, and I'm like, all right, well, he's sitting in some grass. I'm going to do some really cool grass details. So on my image, if I can find my layer, I added some. If I can find my layer, there's my grass layer. Okay, so I just added vertical lines in 2 different colors to create this kind of like grass textured effect. But then I felt it was still missing something, like it still feels really, really bare. There's a lot of space around him. So to kind of fix that up, I really like this idea of, in this artwork here, she has these kind of like water splashes behind her mermaid. And I'm like, oh, really cool. I could do something like that on my drawing. So I put in a wave going behind him. So you'll notice, first of all, I made sure that it kind of adds a little bit of dimension. So there's a bit of water that's in front of him, then it goes behind his leg, and then it comes up behind him again at the back, but then it kind of intertwines with the font, and it looks really, really cool. So to do that, because I know when I draw with a pen just by itself, I find it really hard to kind of get consistent lines that go together. So you can use these 2 options up here, which is your steady stroke and your predictive stroke, and that will get you a much smoother line. But what's even easier than that is I've got this really cool tool on mine called the French curve, which is basically like a ruler. And this big long edge on this side kind of looks like a wave. So all I did was I just used my French curve, and with my paintbrush, I've just gone around that edge. And then I've simply changed the size of that, and I've just duplicated that so that it repeats. It goes in the same angle, exactly the same way. And I just changed the size of my paintbrush to get thin and thick lines. And then I thought it looks really kind of, you know, it was very solid. So I wanted to break that up. So again, using my hard erase tool, I just went in and I literally just drew in some lines. Cuts it out. So you can see here up in that top part, you can just use your eraser tool and create some lines. And again, I just changed the size of my eraser tool to get thin and thick lines. You can see here Hattie uses a lot of solid colors, but I thought for that wave in the background, I didn't want a solid color. I wanted to have it go from dark to light. So to do that without actually stopping and changing my brush a lot of the times, in my layers over here, if I lock this layer, it means that anything that I color now on that layer has to be inside. We'll only paint where those colors are already at. So you can see there that if I paint straight onto my canvas, it's only going to show where the color is on that layer. So all I did is basically I took my dark blue, I did that at the bottom, I did a medium in the middle, and I did a white on the tip. And then that was kind of really quite obvious with the change between 2 colors. So if I just do a quick little bit of red here, I just had to use my blur tool. So my blur tool is over here, and so when I blur it on either side, you can see it sort of just creates a very soft edge transition into the next color. So when the colors are quite similar, you don't see that change quite obviously. It's quite gradual. So that's how I did my little watermark in the background. And I'm happy with it, but I'm like, it's still lacking something. It's still missing a little something. And I'm like, well, he needs a bit of bling because he's a kind of cool kid. So I gave him an earring up on his ear. And again, I did some of those reflective highlights just to give it a bit of change. And I'm like, it still needs something. So I thought, well, she does have in her images a lot of like little motif characters. And one of the motif characters, which is just a simplified character, is the love hearts. And they come up quite a lot in her work. So I thought, well, I can do some love hearts. That's pretty easy. So I did 2 little love hearts, and they're basically hanging off him. And I thought, well, he needs a little something. They kind of look like they're just floating there in midair. So I thought, well, he's got some earrings. Why don't I give him a cool little scarf? Again, my love hearts and my scarf, I just did all of that using my paintbrush. And I did each one on a different layer. The reason I've done that, and I'll just highlight these so you, eyeball these so you can see, that meant that I could paint each one and sort of really tidy it up without disrupting the other parts of his scarf. It just made it really easy to do each individual part rather than trying to go around one solid thing. So I would recommend that as well. It's really helpful to use your layers in that. So again, I've got one hanging off the side and I've got one sitting up there. And so it's kind of coming together now. It's starting to look much fuller. It's starting to look a little bit more revolved. But I'm like, I've got so much empty space. And how does this big wave really connect with my French Bulldog? So I thought, water, let's put in some fish. So I added in some fish to my drawing. And of course, I don't want to draw a lot of fish. So what I did is I used my paintbrush again, and I just did one. And after I'd done my first fish, I just used my rectangle select tool, and I selected that around that image, and I just copied, which is Control C, and then I pasted, which is Control V, and you'll see that I've now got that fish on a new layer. So if I move them over just a little bit, you'll see I've got absolutely same thing. I can then resize that fish and put him anywhere on my page. So I did that, and I duplicated my fish a bunch of times. And again, this was a really great opportunity to add some more dimension, so making things look like they go further back. So I had some fish that are in front of the Bulldog, and then I had some fish that are behind. And of course, it's always interesting to have things that come onto the page and that are going off the page. So that was a really good opportunity too. And then I thought they're just floating there in midair, so I added these little bubble marks as well. And again, I did the same thing with my paintbrush. I just did a few spots, and I did just a few highlights. And that was pretty much it. I just kept going back to my reference images and kept looking at what does she do quite a lot of, what do I like of her work, and I just recreated those same things here using different tools in Sketchbook. Yeah, let me know how your artwork comes out in creating a Hattie Stewart inspired artwork.